I think that if you're not going to innovate in your field, you're getting left behind. There are restorers that still today, they don't even have project management software. They have Google Drive and maybe an Excel spreadsheet to track their jobs. They're getting left behind because of the innovation that people like you and Albeware are putting out there. You're either with the game, trying to grow and be better, or you're a dinosaur, and we all know what happened to the dinosaur. It's about making sure that we're keeping people safe. And not just Johnny and Jane homeowner, but your project managers, your technicians. We have one set of lungs. Getting another set is very expensive.
We're going to be talking about a unique new business opportunity that you guys could add to your restoration business to generate some revenue effortlessly.
We're here in the field of restoration to grow for our families, to make money for our guys, to have them have a living wage that they know that when they're out there breaking their back at 3 o'clock in the morning, sucking the black water out of somebody's basement, that they're not doing it for nothing. And it's so important. Treat your guys like they're your family, but hold them to the highest standard possible. Those are the jewels. You know, when you find those great guys, if they are doing it for you, you got to take care of them.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Albie After Hours podcast, where we talk about propelling the restoration industry forward. I'm your host, Alex Suda. I'm so excited to be here today with a wonderful guest who came from, how many was it? 16 jobs yesterday helping out Helene victims?
Yeah, Hurricane Helene was no joke, Alex.
Yeah.
And we ripped samples for asbestos and lead paint at 17 different properties yesterday.
17, wow.
Just west of Sarasota.
Awesome. Well, yeah, so for our guests here, this is John Evans. John and I have had the pleasure of knowing each other for quite some time now. He's a magician when it comes to everything environmental testing related. I'm super excited to dive in, John, and tell everybody about your backstory because I think it's super cool. Talk a little bit about tech, and then at the end, I want everybody to stay on till the end because we're going to be talking about a unique new business opportunity that you guys could add to your restoration business to generate some revenue effortlessly. How does that sound as an agenda for today, man?
I'm really excited, Alex. Let's dive right in.
Let's do it. Now, moving into technology, because I know you're a geek over technology
100%.
with the Teslas and
Giant
some stuff
nerd.
that we're going to talk. Do you think there will ever be a day where we can have, just like we have a moisture meter testing for moisture content, we can have an asbestos meter that can test for asbestos?
I will tell you this. Nothing would surprise me. Look at how far we've come. When you started in this industry, it was graph paper and a pencil and a tape measure and a camera with a memory card in it, right? Now you can get your iPhone, download free software, spin around 360 and have a 2,200 square foot house done in 45 minutes, uploaded to the cloud, ready for the adjuster in the morning. 100%. So it's come so far with just something as simple as that. I was at the trade conference in Las Vegas earlier this year, and the Matterport people, Matterport, Company Cam, DocuSketch, they're all great things that have good and bad, right? Of course. The Matterport people have a drone.
That's awesome.
You open every door in the house, you set the thing down, you turn on all the lights, it flies around the house in 2 minutes. And you have your sketch and you're done. That's where it's coming. It's not going to require a guy with the big Pelican case and and all that anymore. So it's coming for sure. Part of the problem with the asbestos issue for like testing on site is that it's regulated by federal law. So these laboratories have to be ELAP certified, and it has to and there's chain of custody and all these things. And I think that they might want to get away from that from a regulatory perspective. Federal law changes very slowly.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Very interesting.
Yes, sir.
So let's talk more about technology. Why? I see you have an entire fleet of Tesla vehicles. You love Starlink and all these different products. Where does the passion for technology come from?
I think that if you're not going to innovate in your field, you're getting left behind. There are restorers that still today, they don't even have project management software. They have Google Drive and maybe an Excel spreadsheet to track their jobs. They're getting left behind because of the innovation that people like you and Albeware are putting out there. And frankly, some of them don't even know that it exists. And I try to educate every day. Like, hey, Jim, listen, I know you've been doing this 30 years. Your son's coming up in the business. Great. there is a better mousetrap, and it already exists. You just got to go find it, you know? And so I love the technology aspect of it. Air Guys, our core goal has always been to make the world a better and safer place, right? We're limited in that to the field of industrial hygiene and consulting, but do I really want to drive around a diesel 3500 pickup truck? You know, is that part of getting that done? I don't think that it is. I also believe strongly that Elon Musk is our generation's Howard Hughes. He is changing the world every day. Yeah. I mean, this is a guy who founded PayPal in the late 90s, made his first billion and said, no, I'm not done yet. Yeah. So now he's going to Mars. He's saving people from the Boeing disaster at the space station. He, on a whim, said, you know, I think I want to build a tunnel. And now he's got the Boring Company, and there's our tunnels all over Las Vegas that are being dug right now today. So it's really cool. I think that Tesla makes our life better because as a service company, we don't need like a big Sprinter van. Most of the stuff that I have, pumps, thermal cameras, laser particle counters, all of the sample media that I have and that sort of thing, it can fit in a Camry. It can fit in a Civic. It can even fit in a smart car. So having that ability to go 70 miles in any direction and being able to rely on the supercharger network, it makes a huge difference for us. We're the same as any other service company. We're writing off that 65 cents a mile for everywhere we go. And if I can do it without having to burn dead dinosaurs, I'm going to do it every day.
That's awesome. Yeah, one thing I love about Elon is how like all the different companies support his mission to colonize Mars, right?
Yes.
Like the Teslas have the computers on them, and those are probably going to in the future be used for a network for Mars, right? We're using SpaceX, and we're basically sending up satellites through Starlink and such, and we're, you know, monetizing it by having the public pay for a good that's needed. Internet sucks, ISPs in the States at least. It's atrocious, right? And he does these things, and he gets to monetize those and also create these networks that are eventually going to help him get one step closer to colonizing Mars.
I think that if you asked Elon, he would say that his goal is to make humans a multiplanetary species. Because eventually Earth is going to not be the end of the story here. You know, and we're thinking 10,000 years from now.
But still, somebody needs to plant the seed, and it's going to take many, many, many thousands of years to get there. So.
It is. And how about being that guy who's just making that decision? 1000%. Billionaire. I'm not just going to like go out on my yacht. The guy doesn't even own a house, Alex. Honestly, billionaire doesn't own a house. Just works and works and works and works. And he has one of those crazy minds that like you and I, we look at the microphone, we're like, oh, it's a microphone and it's hooked up to this wire and it goes down into the system, right? He looks at it as if it's like purple and kaleidoscope and sees things totally different than you and I do. And it's beautiful minds like that change the world, 1000%. Right? Now, I'll tell you, Alex, being down, responding to Hurricane Helene, and going down there through North Carolina and Tennessee and seeing the absolute devastation, no cell service anywhere at all. Starlink has come a long way. It used to be some big bulky thing, you know, I remember. But now I brought one just to show you. This is a Milwaukee M18 battery. It's a 12 amp, right? It just goes right into this.
That is so cool.
With this thing that is the size of an iPad,
wow!
I could run 4 of these cameras in 4K. I could put it right here, and I would get a signal right out the window. This beautiful Starlink Mini, guys. If you're going to be doing cat work and you're going to go to an environment like that, you don't need to have the satellite phone anymore. You don't need to spend all that money to have that. You just get this. It's $600 and $50 a month. And it's ready for cat work. All the way down, full signal, even when I saw cell towers on their sides.
Wow.
You know, and having great technology like this, Starlink Mini, super cool. I'm an Elon fan. This is neat. And it's going to get smaller and easier. This little battery, Alex, this will run this thing for 16 hours. 16 hours. Wow. One battery. Wow. You know, it's super cool. So big proponent, Starlink Mini, go look it up. It's good stuff.
Yeah, so these things popped up in my community. So, you know, I'm a pilot, right? And, you know, private aviation hasn't ever really had much internet other than through like whatever it is, Panasonic and stuff like that. When they came out with the Roam, I think there's the Roam and the Roam Mini. a bunch of Cirrus owners put them in the top of their planes and they're sending iMessages from 15,000 feet kind of thing. And then they put a limitation. If you're going over 100 miles an hour, they don't work anymore. And everybody's
Right.
all pissed now. But cool stuff. Really
No,
cool
no,
stuff.
it's really neat. So we always like to have the newest toys for our industrial hygiene technicians that go across the country to do this. And being on the cutting edge is important because many times when you're in a loss event where there's a dispute, it's not just air guys involved. It's one of the other big players that's the industrial hygienist for the carrier.
Exactly.
And so if they have the nicer toys and the better tech, then you look like Sanford and Son compared to what they have,
1,000%. So many restorers are resistant to adopting new technology, as you know, hence why, technology hasn't really advanced up to this point in restoration. What's your number one word of advice to a restorer that's maybe considering technology, maybe hesitant, or a lot of times like, man, it's a pain to switch or it's costly, because obviously new technology is typically more costly than old. What's your number one word of advice, or what would you say to somebody like that?
I think that you have an obligation to always be advancing and growing and getting better. And if you're using old gear, there's nothing wrong with that. Xactimate's going to pay you the same if your LGR is 15 years old or if you just got it from Phoenix. It's the same. But the technology has come so far that you really need to be on the cutting edge and be modular. You know as well as I do, you can get a high roof Sprinter van. You could dry out a school with the contents of that van because of how everything is being so miniaturized. And the amp draw is so much less, even than 6 or 7 years ago.
Exactly.
You can get out of a 20 amp GFI, a DU and 4 or 5 fans, no problem, out of one outlet. Can you imagine doing that 10 years ago? You're popping breakers every 10 minutes.
100%.
So you have to, because you're either with the game, trying to grow and be better, or you're a dinosaur, and we all know what happened to the dinosaurs.
I love that. So let's talk about money for restorers specifically, right?
Right.
You and I have riffed on this idea quite a bit, and you actually, made it come to fruition. But there's a way that restorers can unlock another service line within their business via Air Guys.
Right.
What's that way? How does that work?
So watching Air Guys grow and go all over the country and do this, there are restorers that have been around for a while that saw an opportunity. Like, hey, I'm paying my industrial hygienist $200,000, $300,000 a year to test all my jobs, right? And IH is a profit center. It is similar in the net profits you can receive than if you're a competently operated independent restoration contractor, right? We, like you as the contractor, you have your labor obligation, your trucks, your gear, your insurance, like all that overhead and stuff. We are similar in that we have all those obligations for our workers, but we don't have that huge labor obligation. Our obligation is similar in that we have huge lab bills that we have to pay every month.
Makes sense.
And for us, just I'm sure when you look at your workers' comp statement every quarter, you're like, this is disgusting. I feel the same about my lab bill, but if I don't pay that, then I can't win.
100%.
And I'm here to win. So when we get approached by other restoration contractors that are like, hey, we see some guys are like opening a plumbing company to generate leads for the restoration side. It's the same for them when they think about, can I do the IH and have like a sub line that does the IH for this money that I'm already paying out to a JS Held or an MSC or whoever it is, And yes, that opportunity exists. We were approached by a very successful restorer in Las Vegas. He wanted to open an Air Guys. I said, let's run it through legal, see what this looks like. And I licensed it out to a great restorer named Craig Herman, who owns Construction by Mirage in Las Vegas. Awesome. And now they have a full service Air Guys out there supporting not only their restoration projects, but 7 other restorers in Las Vegas that are now using Air Guys in Las Vegas to do their IH work, a whole new line of business. I mean, I got to keep it under the rug, but they're doing well, Alex. They're doing quite well.
So, but they have to learn all this IH stuff, right? And learn about the labs and all
Right.
this stuff, or no, you take care of all that for them.
We take care of all of the onboarding, and you know the time obligation that takes to take an idea that you've put on your tablet or your legal pad and take that and make it into something that's beautiful that will make the world better. You know, we had to take all that time to put together standard operating procedures. These are your educational obligations. This is what your continuing education looks like. This is the $35,000 in equipment you have to buy. And these are the methodologies by which you're going to write a report for a mold job or an asbestos job or a lead paint job.
Do they write the report, or do you write the report for them, or is it both?
It's not really Mad Libs for mold or Mad Libs for asbestos. Every job is different, right? But there are like the four corners of every project. Like, here are the federal law obligations. This was the type of loss. It was category 3, class 2. There's readily observable organic discoloration. We did testing to verify that it was in fact a class 3 job, blah, blah, blah. And so all of those things get put together in a manner that allows us to train them. For the first year of a branch office doing this, we do peer review on everything because as the industrial hygiene firm of record, we have an obligation to do that.
Of course. Makes sense. Awesome. So if a restoration company is looking to add on an additional service line, they can add on an industrial hygiene service line via AirGuys. You have the licensing and everything turnkey out of the box. How can they reach out to you to?
So I'm not hard to find. I'm John Evans from AirGuys, john@airguys.us. You can see all of our crazy industrial hygiene hijinks at facebook.com/airguysus. Look me up, send us a DM, we'll get it done.
Perfect. And then we'll have Joe put it in the description in the YouTube video below.
That sounds great. We're not hard to find. We're based in Cornwall, New York. We love it.
That's awesome.
Call us anytime, 845-AIR-GUYS.
So tell everybody your background. Where do you come from? How'd you get into this crazy industry?
Right.
I feel like everybody has very unique stories. No two restorers or two people in the industry have the same story. So.
I cross a lot of paths with adjusters and restoration contractors and their techs and project managers. And it's true. Everybody has a completely different story about how they fell in love with this industry. It's not all about making money. That's part of it, but really helping people and helping hold the powerful accountable. AirGuys is an industrial hygiene firm. Okay. We are a full-service industrial hygiene firm that conducts asbestos, lead paint, radon, mold, water damage assessment, consulting. We support restoration contractors across the United States, whether it is a cookie cutter job or if it's one that is going to require a public adjuster, maybe a plaintiff's attorney to hold these insurance companies accountable for the obligations they have under these policies. And so as an industrial hygienist, it's my role to assist homeowners, policyholders, restoration contractors, property managers, across the board, understand what their legal obligations are that are either covered under the policy or not, but more importantly, their obligations under federal and state law, which runs the gamut. There are many states that don't even have any mold or asbestos laws, and several do. And holding insurance companies accountable to those obligations, not because a company like mine is going to just make money from doing it or a restorer is going to be able to pad their bill. That's not what this is about, Alex. It's about making sure that we're keeping people safe. And not just Johnny and Jane homeowner, but your project managers, your technicians. We have one set of lungs. Getting another set is very expensive and it's very risky. So why would we not make sure that these insurance companies and the stakeholders are doing the right thing? AirGuys started in 2019. Prior to founding AirGuys in Cornwall, New York, the jewel of the Hudson Valley, about an hour north of Manhattan, 58 minutes to the George Washington Bridge, so it's not bad.
Wow, you're super precise, man.
Yeah, well, I know what it takes, but that's leaving at 6:30 in the morning. If you're leaving at 7, it's going to be a problem. But that's New York traffic. There's traffic everywhere.
Yeah, same
New
here
York,
in
Chicago, LA, Miami, Atlanta, it's all the same. There's traffic unless you start your day early and make sure that you're getting ahead of everybody else. Because if you're not up before that sun, you know what? somebody else is already beating you today.
1,000%.
You know?
1,000%. So back to founding story. So like you're clearly so freaking passionate. I feel it. I see it on your Facebook videos and stuff like that. Why industrial hygiene? Like, how did this come about? Out of all the possible things you could do in the world, you picked this. Why and how?
So when I was a younger person, I was happily married, a childless couple. When you have no kids and the world is your oyster, you can travel this country. My wife was an executive for a major retailer. And so through that relationship, we were able to travel across the country. Started in Florida, then out to Vegas, and then down to Phoenix, and then up to New York. And I found that it was really important for me to do something that was going to help people. I have a college education, I have a master's degree, and at the end of the day, I didn't want to wear a suit to work every day. I did it when I was in my early 20s, as we all have to do. I think that's an important part of being successful in business, is having that regimented schedule early on, but then learning, hey, I can break away from this and do something different. Back in the early 2000s, there was the building boom in Florida. And some of your listeners and watchers might remember the Chinese drywall debacle. Okay. So at the time in the early 2000s, there was a building boom in Florida and Arizona and Vegas and areas outside of Atlanta. They couldn't get enough building materials. And unfortunately, large retailers like Home Depot and Lowe's imported tens of thousands of containers of contaminated drywall. It had sulfur compounds in it. And these homeowners who had just paid hundreds of thousands of dollars for these new homes on golf courses would go to the closing table, live in the house for 2 weeks, and wonder why it smelled like rotten eggs. I had no training in this at all, but my role in the business that I was in at the time was identifying the foremost expert in the field of industrial hygiene, because what happens is with Chinese drywall, the sulfur compounds react negatively with anything that has copper in it, like your pipes or your wires or your appliances, right? And so unfortunately, these builders, they had to tear out every piece of drywall, every wire, every pipe, I mean, it was billions of dollars is what this cost. And I found the guy that was my mentor in the field of industrial hygiene. His name is Chris Gussick. He runs Adaptive Environmental out in Las Vegas. Worked for him for a couple of years. And then in 2019 decided, hey, it's time for me to do my own thing. Totally amicable. Chris and I work together all the time. We're doing a huge project down in Florida for some assisted living facilities that are having some struggles. But starting in Cornwall, New York, 6 months before the pandemic, and then having that background of industrial hygiene to help large loss companies that were doing a lot of that COVID cleanup in the early days of it, being the person to go out and conduct the assessment, write the protocol. This is how you're going to clean this structure. And as you know, like that goal of how are we going to clean a structure where one person had COVID, it was a moving target. Every 2 weeks there was new guidance. 100%. And so making sure you're on the cutting edge and not having old work product was super important. And took that and continued to grow. Got the New York State mold license, got the New York State asbestos license. We're federally licensed through the EPA for lead-based paint risk assessor. Doing the radon and getting all the tools and the toys, the stuff that Johnny and Jane homeowner can't go get off the shelf at Home Depot in the tool aisle. You know, that's great. It's a lot of fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we love making the world a better place and keeping our environment safe.
That's awesome. So, you know, when you're trying to innovate and propel an industry forward, I think the best ways that we can push things forward is by talking about topics that maybe aren't spoken about as often, right? And maybe a little controversy. I know, not political or anything like that. But what I want to dive in is, in my experience as a restorer, right, there's a bunch of ideologies when it comes to indoor hygiene, right? Some people are like, test absolutely everything. You should absolutely get a report and a protocol. And you know, there's one extreme where it's like, I don't know, let's call it, some people claim that it's overly testing. And then there's the other extreme that, you know, don't test anything. What's your opinion on it? Like, where's the reality of when we have to test things, when we shouldn't test things? Should we always try to test it? Do you feel like sometimes we can go overboard if we test? Is there no such thing as overboard testing? just again voicing the opinion of the restorer here live on the Albee After Hours podcast.
Well, Alex, I think that it's really important to remember that there are federal law obligations, that you, as a contractor, have an obligation under OSHA at a minimum to protect your workers. I think OSHA cares less about occupants, they care about your workers.
100%.
And if there's an exposure hazard, then you have an obligation to identify that exposure if it exists. So right now today, if there was to be a loss at a building that was given a certificate of occupancy 5 years ago, you and I probably generally agree that 99.9%, there's no lead-based paint. There's no asbestos, right? But federal EPA NESHAP obligates you as the contractor to make sure that there's no asbestos-containing materials in a commercial loss or an institutional loss, right? And so I am of the opinion that my role is not to say, Alex, you must test. My role is to say, you have a loss at a large commercial building that is accessible to the public. Maybe it's a trampoline park, maybe it is a shopping mall, right? And so you have an obligation to understand what your goals are. So I think that I would say, Alex, you have a loss that you're going to do quite well with, and you have an obligation to test. And here is the federal law that says that you must do this. My recommendation to you is to follow federal law. Please let me know how you'd like to proceed.
Okay.
So you sort of receive that information from me as the industrial hygienist of record on the project, and then you advise and consent. You take that information from me, and maybe you approach your community manager or your adjuster and say, hey, here's an email. Attached is the errors and omissions and liability insurance from this commercial industrial hygiene firm that says we must do this. I'm now on notice as Alex Duda, restorer to the stars, that we have to solve this problem. Unless you give me something in writing, Chubb or AIG or Farmers, that you are not allowing us to do this, we're going to do it.
So do you recommend then, what about the residential typical basement flooded at 2 a.m. In a newly built home? Is your thesis basically that everything should be tested?
I don't think it's my thesis. I think it's federal law.
Got it.
And I think that
So whether it's residential or commercial, whatever loss that requires removing building materials.
it's 2:00 in the morning. It's a single family home. It's 2,200 square feet. There's 3 inches of black water in the basement. What's your obligation? First, you're going to assess. Then you're going to extract. Then you're going to document, and you're going to set your equipment, your dehumidifier and your air scrubbers, and you're going to say, look, we have mitigated the emergency at this point. From now until we get the industrial hygiene results back, we can't do the demo. Now, but you and I know that if you and I go buy sheetrock at Lowe's and have it put up in a house, and then 5 years later there's a problem, 99.9% there's not going to be asbestos. However, we do find it. We had one about 3 weeks ago, just before I went down to Florida for the hurricane. 2015, single family home, 3% chrysotile asbestos in the joint compound.
Wow.
Yeah. So it exists. It's out there. And because of that, and of course, because the policyholder had good insurance, where the adjuster was not going to hem and haw and say, oh, I don't want to pay for that. We don't care if you want to pay for it. It's federal law.
Yep.
And the contractor has an obligation to follow federal law, not because you don't want to pay for it, but because he's got to protect his guys and his gals that are out there doing the work.
1,000%. Yeah, and one little asbestos fiber won't show up. You won't have any symptoms right now. It'll show up 30 to 40 years later, right?
Of course, and you know from your industry training, if I go take a PCM cassette that looks like one of those old film canisters, and I take a sample of the outdoor air here in Chicago on a beautiful, bright, sunny day, there's asbestos fibers floating around in the air right now today. If I was to send them to Eurofins or EMSL or any of the big national environmental laboratories, that's why we take background samples, to show, like, here's your background exposure level.
Yep.
It exists.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Yes, sir.
So then the next objection that Restore would have, and I think, again, this is important to highlight. That's why I'm going into these controversies. But it's like, man, I just want to get this job done, right? I don't want to go in and then extract and then come back and then demolish and call, an industrial hygiene person. They're going to come in like 3 to 4 days, and then it's going to take forever for it to be tested. Again, maybe they're just excuses, but it's the reality, right, of why maybe certain people don't do testing.
Of course.
So what is your response to that?
My response to that is many of the major national firms are having people go and get the asbestos building inspector training for their project managers, so that your project manager that's there at 2:00 in the morning can go ahead and take those bulk samples. This is happening. I don't get calls from Belfour for things like this, for instance, because almost every single one of their branch offices has a person that has, at minimum, that asbestos training, so they can go and do it themselves. And I get asked to consult on issues like this. Okay, John, are we like on a slippery slope here if we're the restorer and we're also doing the testing? And the answer is, well, no, because if you're doing testing and it does come back hot, then you're going to call a firm like Air Guys anyway to write the protocol for how to abate the asbestos hazard,
100%.
right? But if they get it, they take their samples, they drop it off, because these labs are 24 hours. You know, you can go right here in Chicago and drop off samples. You'll have results in 6 hours.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, this is not something where, oh, he's got to take a sample and wait for a week, you know?
Simple. So we can train our staff members to collect samples, and we have access to this. So John, any last words for our fellow restorers listening here? I mean, you dropped a lot of gold via, you know, technology and indoor air quality. That Starlink thing was super cool. I think every restorer listening to this should get a bunch of those and throw them in their trucks. But what didn't we cover that we should cover?
We're here in the field of restoration to grow for our families, to make money for our guys, to have them have a living wage that they know that when they're out there breaking their back at 3:00 in the morning, sucking the black water out of somebody's basement, that they're not doing it for nothing. And it's so important. Treat your guys like they're your family, but hold them to the highest standard possible. And it's a huge issue. Finding labor to do this and do it at a high level, and say, I'm going to be on Team Acme Restoration, and I'm going to be a guy, and I'm going to be with you for a long time. Those are the jewels. You know, when you find those great guys, if they are doing it for you, you got to take care of them. Do whatever is necessary, because it's those guys that are doing it at 3:00 in the morning that allows you to have your head on your pillow so you can be up at 5:30 starting your day.
Wow, that's deep. Yeah, as an industry, I think we geek out over the technical knowledge a lot, right? ISRC classes, you know, how to, you know, clean up mold, how to calculate air movers, dehues, which is fine. Like, I respect it, but I don't think we truly, you know, pay enough attention to the soft skills, to the leadership skills, to the taking care of people, to the, you know, mindsets out there, right? A lot of restorers kind of operate with this governor of like scarcity mindset, or like, let me just take it all for myself kind of thing. When in reality, yeah, the more, I think my favorite quote's that you always will get what you desire for others. So if you can desire more for your technicians, for your community, for, you know, your employees in general, you'll in turn get more. And we can get religious with that, philosophical, spiritual, but I'm glad you brought that up.
There are those that say stay small and keep it all, but when they stay small and keep it all, they never see their family.
Yeah.
Get yourself a good team member, and then another one, and then another one, and treat those inventories of personnel like gold, because they are, man. They really are.
Yeah. Yeah, that's deep. Thing that came up to my mind right now is whoever your creator is, it's an insult if you stay small.
Yes.
If you don't go all out and you don't play full and express yourself to whatever you were destined to do, you just stay small, that's a big insult.
Think about how many people in your circle you know that are a super specialist at what they do on the contracting side, but it's always been a one-man show.
Yeah.
A cabinet maker,
Yeah.
a drywall guy, a painter, right? Yeah. Those guys that never grew and were just like, I'm going to just stay in my old Tacoma and I'm going to go do job to job. They're lucky if they get 10 days away from doing
1,000%.
it, you know?
Yeah.
Get yourself a team.
Yeah.
And there's no shame at all in not hiring somebody that already has 10 years experience. My best team member started right out of college with zero experience in the industry. And I took her. Her name is Bailey. She's a biologist for Air Guys. Wow. She does so well, and she represents Air Guys to such a high level of desire for me and my wife Virginia as business owners that we're like, wow, I wish I could have 10 more just like her. You have people on your team, you're like,
1,000%.
man, I wish I had like just a couple more, you know?
Yeah.
So, but that's your best asset. It's better than the Starlink, better than the Tesla,
1000%.
better than any branding and marketing you can do. It's all about the people.
Yeah. Yep. Your number one asset does not belong on your balance sheet.
That's exactly right.
Awesome. Cool, man. Well, this was very fun. We actually end these with a hug. So
Okay.
if I can ask you to stand up, we're going to do a quick hug here. But,
I'm a hugger.
Yeah, this was awesome. This was great. Thanks so much
Thanks
for
for
joining
having
us
me.
here. Love this.
Yes, sir.
Bring it in, buddy.
Yes, sir.